everyone, welcome to Cherish TV. We are so glad you tuned in again. Today we are talking about the dynamics between men and women in the workplace. So that's a pretty exciting topic. I think we're going to have a lot to say about that. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Matt Hubbard, because not only do you have a master's in psychology, you brainiac you, but you also are an employer and you work with many women at your chiropractic. We're going to start with you.
Great. How lucky am I? No.
In the hot seat.
In the hot seat, that's right. It's definitely, I will say this as an employer first, because I'm new as an employee at the church, but being someone that's been in practice with lots of female dynamics, I would say over the last 17 years, it has been interesting because I will say in the last 10 years, I've watched the dynamics change of what's acceptable and what's not.
Right.
So with that being said, what was okay 17 years ago isn't okay today. And I think that you have to, as an employer, take that into consideration, whether it's training, whether it's learning the dynamics out of respect, how to be the best boss, how I can lead my team.
Right.
And I think it's been very interesting to watch too. I don't have a lot of turnover. So people that usually stay with me long term. And I would tell you that it's because of what I base my foundation on, which is respecting opinions, hearing them, letting their voice be heard. Is having a code of honor or a values system set up, meaning we all have baggage. When you come to this office, you have a choice to leave that baggage at the door. You will not bring that into this office because we're in a healing environment to help people. So if you can't get over your stuff, you need to call in and take a health day.
So that's for male and female.
And
though.
female.
Yeah.
That's
the
standard.
Is the standard the same for
a
men
guy
and
that
women?
comes in.
So is that same code of conduct the same for men?
Men
and
can
for
be
women?
moody. I'm just
Absolutely.
saying, I know some moody
No, it's the same.
men.
I treat them the same because they can't. Everybody can have a bad day, but it's also a choice whether you walk into these doors. Are you going to allow your emotions to dictate the work environment, or are you going to take control of those emotions? And it's the same standard for men or women. The only thing that I would say that every Monday meeting, if I see some cattiness or some interpersonal dynamic going on, and they haven't resolved it after I would call 2 cycles or 2 weeks, then I just say, hey, I need you to either handle it because this is what I'm feeling, because there's an energy or an emotion in an office. It's the elephant in the room. So I call out elephants because it's unacceptable to me to allow someone to
Emotionally
hijack the entire office, because
Good.
it kills the vibe, the energy, it kills everything, and to me, puts me in a bad place. And so I just facilitate healthy conversations, and the quicker you do it,
So if you see something, deal with it immediately, as opposed to letting it linger in the air and kind of bring down productivity for everybody. Nobody wants to work
so
in a
if we let it go,
environment.
passive aggressiveness shows up, and that's where unhealthy work dynamics between genders will reveal themselves and get nasty, in my opinion, as an employer.
Okay, I like that. All right, Dr. Lisa, we're surrounded by doctors today. Your doctorate is in human and organizational development. So I just want to kind of get some thoughts from you on this topic.
Well, I'd say most workplaces are not like Dr. Matt's. That's a great role model. That's phenomenal. When we look at the big picture perspective, there was a recent study by Forbes that said only 30% of employees today say they're engaged. They feel engaged in the workplace.
Is that right?
Another study said that 82% of people have felt that it's been 50 days, 50, since they had any kind of encouragement in the workplace. So it's really interesting when you look at these dynamics and you think about the traditional feminine characteristics of open communication and value and encouragement. We're seeing those are lacking in the workforce today. It's not that women aren't present in the workforce. 47% of the workforce is represented by women, but we're not bringing all we have to the table. We're not bringing this caring, this encouraging environment to transform that workplace culture.
Wow, and you're saying that's because a lot of employers aren't creating an environment where that is flourishing and it's not coming, so wow.
I would say we need to do more to step into that. Our differences should be something we embrace. They're not limiting, they should be liberating. There's something that we can be true to and authentic to.
So what would be something practical you could say? So obviously we can't avoid working with each other, nor do we want to, men and women. What would you say, maybe from both sides, from both ends, what could a man do to have a better working relationship with the women on his team and vice versa?
Well, first, I think we want to think about the fact we're all on the same team. Abraham Lincoln once said that America would never be destroyed from without, we would only be destroyed from
Wow.
within when we
was
falter.
a
And I
smart
think
man.
for our churches,
Yeah.
our organizations, our our communities, that same fact is true. So being true to who we really are. For women, neurally, neurobiologically, we're so different one another. There was just a study done on 46,000 brains and looking at the quantifiable differences between male and female brains. And we each bring something beautiful and unique. There's a reason that around the globe it's 50% women, 50% men born into this planet. There's a reason for that.
Yeah,
The
God's
50-50,
design.
God's design
Yeah.
in our relationships. They're complementary. So for women, we have an easier time connecting emotion with experience because we have the cross-hemispheric talk with our brains. And so being able to bring that, reading people, discerning, what Dr. Matt was talking about earlier, looking at your employees and saying, what's really going on in their life. And I know for me, hiring diversely, I like to hire people who are opposite personality to me. Same core values, but opposite personality.
Good.
And that really helps to bring kind of that fire, and it helps to reach all of
For
my
sharpening.
demographic.
And the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron.
Right.
So you get that friction that happens when you have two opposing views but the same core values. I actually really like that idea. Thank you. Andy,
Yes.
you work with a lot of girls.
Sure do.
And you're in the creative arena. And I've always found you to be incredibly chivalrous, gentlemanly, great to work
thanks.
with. Just tell us some of the things that you've faced and done here. Any advice you can give,
Yep,
lessons learned.
Yeah, I love getting to work with both men and women, and I guess, maybe a year or two ago, I just noticed within myself, my own communication with team members, that I would probably sort of receive information differently if it came from a female than it would if it came from a man.
Right.
And once I had that sort of light bulb moment, I was kind of shocked when I examined in my own heart, my own just receptivity in communication, that was the case. And so I thought, if one of my guys was telling me the same thing, I'd probably have a bit more openness. And a term I've heard more recently is in-group bias.
Yeah.
And so my in-group is obviously men.
Yeah.
And with your in-group, you give more, you have more understanding. Yeah, Aussie men in particular, I guess. A bit more understanding. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You have more empathy for where they're coming from. You know you're on the same page, so you've got your guard down a bit more.
Yes.
But when information comes from someone who's in your out group, sometimes there can be a bit more of a wall that it's got to get through.
Okay.
So when I noticed that in myself, that I was receiving information differently from a female, I was like, God, I'm sorry about this. I don't want to block off or treat people differently because of their gender.
Right.
And so that was just a moment of heart change
So
in
good.
myself.
So you had like a moment where you had to acknowledge what was in there and then repent,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
lack of a better word, and say,
No,
I'm going
that's
to
the
behave
word.
differently.
Yeah.
Stacey, I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
I want to ask you, what can we communicate to the men out there who are working with women about maybe behaviours they're carrying into the workplace that are not working for us, that actually
Right.
don't bring out the results that we'd like, or feel, whether it be demeaning or...
Yeah, I think
What
that,
have you?
I worked both in the corporate world, very, what we would say, there's some Christians, but in a very secular corporate America, and then I've worked and served in church.
Yes.
But I have found some uniquenesses in that, and I have found some of the things that are the same in working with men and women. And in both spheres, I found that the role in which we are given at work, one, we need to be good at.
Yes.
That's why we were hired.
Right.
So regardless of our
Yes,
gender,
good.
our expertise is something that we need to hone in on and continually educate ourselves in.
Right.
Yep.
I found the dynamics of men and women, there is a way to work well with one another and have mutual respect.
Yes.
And I think what Andrew said is really important. One, we need to assess ourselves
Yeah.
Right.
and go, am I receiving from men? And then also, how am I communicating? And I found that as a woman working with a lot of men, both in ministry and in the corporate world, I had to adjust the way that I spoke.
Right.
That
That's a
is
good
not
point.
indicative. I am still the same person. I'm
Right.
who I am, and that doesn't have to change. So what I
Right,
didn't
but what's your
do
audience?
was try to be a man. No,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Love you
right.
guys,
Yeah.
but that's not who I am. And
Yes.
so I realized, okay, I can tap into who I am. I'm a
Yeah.
caring, educated person, But when I communicate with men, I do need to communicate differently. Shorter is better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Concise, bullet points.
Yeah, headlines and bullet points.
Headlines. I
Yeah.
don't need to get into the detail.
Yeah.
I need to know. I know for me that, yep, it's heard and we're running with it. But I just learned to adjust my communication style dependent upon each person that was in front of me. And that's something that would vary.
So you've
depending
taken
on
the
people.
personal responsibility there to make sure that you get along with the people you work with, which very few people do. They want everybody else to make the compromises.
Yeah, so true.
However, I want to know from you, is there some advice you could give to the menfolk? Is there anything they typically do, not to mass generalize, although here it goes, that they can do that can make life easier in the workplace for you? What is there any one thing where you'd be like, man, I wish men would not do this?
I think, the mutual respect.
Okay.
So when walking into an office or communicating, with me, there is just a level of already, there's respect here. I want to hear what you have to say, not just because I have an unbiased, group that I'm not going to take what you're saying into consideration because you're a woman or that kind of thing. So for me, I think helpful when, a guy comes into the room and there's a mutual respect of one another and we're able to receive. Also, I appreciate when if there is a rift or it's not working out well, if a man will just take the time to actually find out what's the real root reason there and let's work through that. So, hey, we're not communicating well. What can we do to communicate better?
Right.
Let's get on the same page.
Yes.
I find that
That's great.
sometimes men will either bulldoze or deflect. I don't want to deal. I don't know how to communicate with you, so I won't.
Yeah, just
That's
withdraw.
not helpful in the workplace.
Did you hear that, men of America? Go ahead.
So
The counter.
it's not even a counter, but I want to give it just a little bit different perspective. So I've been in the business world as a boss or an employer my whole life. That's
Right.
all I've ever known. And so now I'm an employee and I get to work with this young lady
Yeah.
at a high level, high intensity, and I've actually had to make decisions that I'll walk in a room, we'll have a meeting, but I have what I've had for 20 years programmed in my brain, and I'm a boss, and I
Yeah.
tell people what to do, and I facilitate a direction.
Right.
I've actually had to listen intently more than I ever have.
Wow.
I have to decide, what am I doing? It's almost like two different brains talking to my
Yeah.
head, and
Wow.
I've had to choose to respect someone else leading me, which has never been done.
Right.
And it's actually brought up internal dialogue that has helped
Yeah.
me realize and evaluate how I need to understand where she's coming from. So I've
That's
learned
great.
to walk in their shoes, if you will.
Yeah, good.
And I don't look at because she's a woman, I look at a position or I look
Yes.
at her experience. I look at her as I respect her. Now I need to listen differently and I'm not trying to lead her or coach her.
Yes.
And it's-
Because we're trying to get to the same result.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah,
So there is a mutual respect there that we may be trying to get to it a little bit differently, but the resolve is there is going to be some really great success coming from
Yeah.
how we collaborate with one another instead of just ignoring
Right,
one
if we
another.
play into those differences. And I think as Christians, it's really important for us to remember that our goal is to build one another up.
Right.
Oh,
Right,
that's
not to
brilliant.
And
tear
you
each
can't
other
turn that off
down.
in the workplace.
Right.
It's not
No.
just something that we do in
Right.
church.
There's a
Yeah.
great study
Right.
on peer
Yeah.
praise. In fact, peer praise is transforming the workplace.
Wow.
Sean Aker,
Ooh.
Dr. Sean Aker
Oh,
at
yeah.
Harvard,
Yeah.
Harvard
Alright.
has been studying that and just
Peer
transformed it. So
praise.
peer praise,
Google
encouragement,
that.
value.
Yes.
The
Okay,
book
thank
on
you,
culture
Lisa.
code.
Yeah.
is-
Culture.
Oh, I love that book.
yeah.
There are a lot of resources out there, but thank you guys so much for opening up this topic with us this morning. What's clear is we need to be flexible. We also need to learn to communicate well, especially in this day and age where there just seems to be a whole lot of conflict happening in the workplace. We can be the change we want to see. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time on Cherish TV.